about time you tune in. We speak life for reality. Our thoughts are not fiction. No one gets an opinion on the topics that we mention with the Holy Ghost boldness. God's in control of this. Real talk with real men for purpose and focus. Growth to get better. See, man up, we better. To change for the better. The future getting better. True men of God. Leading, going hard. It's time to level up with the Man Up Squad. Now, man up. You got this. M-A-N-U-P. Man up. That man up. M-A-N-U-P. That man up.
Good afternoon. How y'all doing?
Doing good.
All right.
Doing good.
Welcome to another episode of Man Up. My name is Minister Chris, and I am sitting here in the stead for Pastor Tony Smith. Fellas, how y'all doing?
Doing great.
Doing good?
Doing good.
All right, cool. We can act like, just treat me like pastor, okay? Hey, with that, I'm gonna give y'all my cash app. All right, so good. Thank you for letting us in your home. Today we got a topic, and this is gonna be a continuation of a topic we talked about, and we were so passionate for it before, and I don't think we got it all out. So we're gonna talk about why are men silent. A lot of times you'll hear spouses and kids is like, okay, my father don't talk, or spouses, my man don't talk, my husband don't talk, and a lot of times they don't understand it. They don't understand what's behind that silence. So here, who wants to kick us off?
So I guess I'll start off then, since I'm to the right. A lot of times us men, we tend to stay silent because I know me personally, I know words can hurt. So sometimes you have to be silent because you have to choose what words you want to use because, just like anybody else, what comes out of your mouth can damage a person, can damage a relationship, could damage a lot of things. So sometimes we stay silent because we want to take that time to decide what we want to say and how we want to deliver it.
Okay, what about you?
Sometimes it comes from like disrespect, like you being disrespected as a man. Most men, they just get silent because you really gonna lash back out once you feel like you're being disrespected in any type of way.
I would say we learn now that being silent is not really good. And I could say, like, okay, for myself, that, silence because you know what you're about to say, and the party that you created said to, they're going to think that you're being totally disrespectful because you're saying it at a different tonality than they, being used to. So a lot of times you just say, let me just don't even say nothing at this time. Because they're not going to be able to take it, and then they're going to think that you're saying something, even if it could be that you're saying the right stuff, but because the receiver on the other end don't know how to receive it, they think that you're being, angry or mean about it. So you just say, I'm just going to just be silent.
That's a good leeway. So here, let me ask you this: Do you think that there's a good thing when we just stay silent? Now you kind of started it, but Marcus Cole, what you think about that?
I think honestly, we get to pick and choose sometimes when we do and want to be silent. Sometimes men use it as comfort, and men use it as a way of regrouping. Because sometimes when a woman or your spouse or someone can come in, with the harsh tongue, we can come back just as aggressive, as they came. So sometimes men use it as a defense mechanism to say, let me digress, let me, process, because sometimes we process in the situation, honestly. So that's how I feel.
Now, here, let me ask you this: Do a lot of times do we have that? Do we communicate that thorough to where we say, hey, I need to process this? Can we address this later, or do we just shut down and then the other person's like, okay, so when are we gonna deal with this? So what you think, MIT?
What I think is when I know that with me, I try to pick and choose a time depending what the topic is, whether it's the kids, whether it's the relationship, right? But when I get silent, what you just said, I get tired of repeating myself. So we already had this conversation. I choose to get silent, right? Especially if I know where it's going to wind up going. So I get silent, and I'll pick a time later to talk about it. So if she is frustrated, or he, because we're not dealing with it right now, sometimes you gotta use wisdom because you know where it's gonna go. They wanna talk now, they wanna do this now. Then when you bite their head off, it's like, why you talk to me like that? You wanted it now. So give him or her that space to back up. That space to back up. Or, you get what I'm saying? But I definitely will say that pick and choose a time to deal with whatever that conversation is. But when I get silent, it's because I know where it's gonna go, and I know my temper. So I get silent.
What you think?
Well, that can go both ways, realistically, with me anyway. If you be silent, if I be silent, it's going to keep on going because you're not responding, or I'm not, or a person's not responding. And then if you talk, it's going to keep on going because then it's going to be fire added to the fuel, fuel added to the fire. It's going to keep on going. It's going to light up. So it's kind of like I don't know which way to go sometimes. You know what I mean? You be silent, you're in trouble. If you talk, you're in trouble. So it seems like it's pointless.
And pick a time. Because if you struggle with that right there, you definitely need time to get yourself together. You see what I'm saying? Because you feel like you stuck. You said, like, if I say something, it's going to be bad. If I don't, it's bad. That person already got you in the trick bag. So you got to do what's best for you. Gather your thoughts or whatever, and especially if you're in marriage, your partners should start understanding that. You get what I'm saying?
Right. You got to pick and choose your battles. Like, two people going at it combative towards each other ain't going to solve nothing. I have never seen that before, but I think when you're your spouse and she need to understand, like me, I feel like I'm getting to the point where I don't get silent no more. That used to be me, but I'm trying to change who I am. So
You gonna say it.
I'm going to say what I had to say
Right.
and try not to say nothing. Because, if you say something, you got to say it almost like not a man tone, but that middle tone, because they're going to say, now you loud. I'm not loud. I'm just telling you what I'm trying to tell you. But you feel like you're offended because I'm telling you what I'm telling you. But if you give a man a chance to process what's going on, just give him a minute. But you want to hash it out at this moment. Sometimes that's just not good.
Do you think that because from the opposite end, in our silence, what happens is that the other person is now creating a storyline or a narrative. So do you think how would you say a person would be better at, okay, well, I used to get silent, and then because if I get silent, then so it's just like how a story creates in their mind, then we arguing, because when we get silent, we arguing on our mind too, like, I can't stand you, that's why I don't like you, blah, blah, blah. And so what are some better ways to deal with that, to have good timing, to place my words the right way? What are some better ways of handling that?
Well, I think honestly, communication is probably the key. And speaking particularly for marriages, it's got to be communication. That's got to be the bridge. I know for me and my wife, we have safe words. Whereas though if we talking about anything, or if we in anywhere or any atmosphere, regardless of what we're talking about, we have our own personal safe words to cut off, or to know, like, hey, you're going too far, or hey, that's enough, and stuff like that may seem small, but that's huge. That's our way of communicating to one another. If my wife has a question, or she's, I don't like to use the word nagging. We don't like to use the word nagging, but I'll get it out. I'll hear
Twice you used it. Just to let you know, twice.
I'm in a safe place. I'm glad to be among brethren. But yeah, she knows that when we get to a certain point, and I use that safe word, like, all right, that's enough, and we can know where to start at.
Communication is also sticking to the point of my point, right? When you say, like I said, we get silent, say, we gonna talk about this later.
Very good.
That's communication.
Very
The safe
good.
word is basically saying the same thing. Whatever it is y'all safe word is basically saying you're going too far, this, that, and other. But instead of just getting silent and leave, go in the basement, don't say nothing, you be like, I want to deal with this later.
Can you explain the safe word for everybody who maybe don't know? Because I've heard that, but everybody may not know what that means. Yeah, safe word. Or safe word.
Oh, what is our safe word?
Yes.
Our safe word is ditto.
And explain what that means, though, for maybe people who watch.
What does safe word mean?
What does it mean? What does a safe word
Okay,
mean?
so a safe word is basically a word that you and your spouse has set aside and agreed on, that whatever y'all talking about, whatever y'all going through, once that word is said, there's no more further communication, or we talk about something else. There's a cutoff and a limit, because at that point, we're throwing daggers at each other, we're throwing darts, and we don't want to be going to war with something that only could took 5 minutes to deal with versus 5 days, or lingering around.
Yeah, and
That was good. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
and like you said, a safe word is good, but it also, the people have to be mature enough to understand
Respect
that this is the safe word right here, because anger can overpower the safe word. You know, if the person, you say, well, no, it ain't safe right now because I gotta get this out. You know, what have you? Like, hey, that's again, because an incident can happen in any environment, and that's a lot of times where I think that a guy could take the time to shut down. Because of the environment that they might be in. Like, this ain't the right place at the right time. But, boy, I got some stuff to say, but I can't say it right now, so safe word.
So you mean, you mean like if you don't respect the safe word, like let's say your safe word is pineapples, and your spouse be like, pineapples, like, man, screw you and them pineapples, and the juice and the bananas, and so that's disrespect the safe word.
Piece, yeah.
So when the safe word, how it's supposed to go is like, she say like, pineapples, and you're like, okay. So that's what the safe word is supposed to just calm down. I like that. That's very good.
It's like a happy medium.
Well, let me cut you off, man.
Go ahead.
I used to be that way. I used to be a whole lot silent, and it's just not good. So any man out there, it's not really good to walk around in your house silent. We do take it too far sometimes. Like 2 and 3 days, we take it too far, and especially if you're married. Come on, how you gonna walk past your wife every day and don't say nothing? Because nothing is promised to us. Yep. Let's get that straight. Right. People leaving here every second of the day. So, try to figure it out. You can at least say good morning, good evening, until y'all get to a common place where y'all can have an adult conversation.
And killed him. He was like, now think about, the story he telling me, I'm like 13, 14 years old. He was like, so think about if he didn't kiss his wife goodbye. Do you think he knew he was gonna die that day? I'm 13 years old. I'm like, no. He was like, so that's why you should never let the sun go down on your anger. He was like, because it's not promised. And so every time I see Burger King, I always look left to make sure. Okay? So yeah, all right. So here, what are some other things do you think that we can go a little bit farther? Because a lot of the things that we do as men is because of how we've been taught as young men. Situation we have been through as young men. So do you think sometimes silence comes from where, and a lot of times men don't like to talk about this, where we don't maybe feel like we're worthy, we've maybe lost our voice, guilt. What about that? Do you think sometimes silence comes from that?
I like to use myself as an example, but silence, I came up in my dad was a little abusive, right? So my thing was with my mom. So I didn't want to be that. Sometimes parents could teach you stuff by being them. You get what I'm saying? So my quietness comes from that. I don't want to blow up. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? And I started now. What I said earlier is, how I do stuff, but I've learned to diffuse, right? So some arguments you might have, and you just, when you let it go, you come back and be like, let's go get something to eat. Just out the blue, it mess them up. You get what I'm saying? You go get something they like, or and don't even talk about the thing because, like I said earlier, you already know we're about to talk about it, most of the time, if it's a repeat argument. Absolutely. You get what I'm saying? So sometimes to diffuse it and not even deal with it, and then the day just goes on. And that's with kids, the relationship or whatever. Right. You know what I mean? But I do think a lot of the silence for men comes with how they was raised, what they've been through. And I try not to be certain ways because of things I've seen and try to do stuff a different way and better. And they don't get that sometimes and thinking, because I've heard women say, you just running from stuff. You ain't no man, and they're home with it. And it's like, they don't even get it. And that's why sometimes if they don't respect the word, you have to walk away.
The crazy thing just to watch you process that, because as soon as he knew he was going to have the conversation, he went through a process just in front of us. And it shows how things that we go through, even though you see grown men, what you don't see are the little boys sitting in these same chairs who we've gone through things and seen things. I've seen the same thing. I've heard my mother getting in arguments and hitting the wall from my stepfather, who was a crackhead and alcoholic, and it caused me to not want to be a certain way because of that. Right. But that's why communication. I've been told before that you never have an issue with over communication. The issues always come with under communication. When we don't communicate, when we silent and a lot of times what we'll do, we'll just kind of get silent and kind of let it go, and then we never deal with it, but then it stays there. It's almost like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave this right here, but when I get mad, I remember where I left it. So, then I put something else there. Then another argument, I put something else there. So we eventually gotta have silence, but just like the word also says, you don't know a fool until he opens his mouth. We have to think about it and be like, okay, well, this is not a good time. The safe word, I think, is phenomenal. What about some other things that maybe, or experiences that have maybe taught us silence from maybe young men or whatever?
Well, I straight up say with communication, with being silent, with high emotions. You know, you can't communicate with somebody when it's very emotional. So it's not a conversation. You know, now you just got a bunch of yelling and bickering. So get silent. You won't. And then when you try and bring it up later, when everybody calm down, then it's, why you nitpicking? Mm-hmm. You know, or why you bringing that stuff up? So that it causes a problem. You know, and as men, we probably all went through that, you know, even before we got married, you know. So it builds up, what's the word I'm looking for, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a repeated cycle, you know what I mean? It build up a repeated cycle. So it's gonna be hard to break that cycle unless somebody is able to communicate whenever you're having a conversation. Other than that, it's just going to keep on getting that same brick wall. It's going to get silent.
But we got to stop, piggyback off you, Minister Chris, that putting things to the side. Because that's when you really going to blow up. And you may black out and do something that you're going to regret. So we got to figure out the communication part between husband and wife or whoever. You got to figure it out. Everything ain't got to be a rah, rah, rah. I'm recently married since, December of last year. I don't argue with you. I'm telling you, I just don't. We don't really get to know little things. And if we do, like, you know this new with me, y'all all know me, right? I'll come down and say, like, you still mad about that? You know, this to break the ice, because it ain't no use to have you walking around silent or mad because I did something you didn't like. As men, we gotta take a step forward. We the leader of the house. You don't have to be like that. You understand what I'm saying?
Do you think in our silence we get stubborn? And then I know we kind of been talking about relationships, but what about, because especially men and with our kids, do you think there's situations where it's like let's say the kid ain't acting right, and let's say the kid was, because men, we're real high on respect. So let's say kids disrespected you. Like, I ain't speaking to them. I ain't, no, till they fix it, I'm silent. And that sound familiar, don't it?
Yeah.
So what about those type of situations?
I would say that is not good, but you learn from experience. And the reason why it's not good is because you're the one that's raising the child. So all you're really doing is what you do, they're going to do and pick up later on. But because you're the parent over the child, all of us probably done it before. You didn't talk to your child, but like I say, it's not right. So when you mature and you get better, because the Bible says, be quick to hear and slow to speak. So when you're listening, your child wants to come to you and be able to communicate, but if you shut down, you just close the door off of your child coming to you to have an open conversation about anything, because if they say something right or wrong and you shut down from talking to them about it, now they know I can't come to you. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like not good to shut down, especially for the child. I'm
gonna use a scenario that you talk about all the time, this scenario is repeated. You know how you talk about how when you found out your daughter was pregnant,
yeah.
the oldest,
right.
And I know a situation where a young lady, she got pregnant and her father hasn't talked to her since. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about how you may have been hurt and offended and disappointed, but how, and maybe if you did shut down and if you and then when it hits you like, okay, I shouldn't have done this, and how it affects, and then maybe if there's some other scenarios, go ahead.
Yeah, so that happened, like you said, that happened to me, and when I found out, because I thought I failed as a dad, and my daughter got pregnant, and when she didn't tell me, I found out, in the craziest way, and then she separated herself from me. And through her separating herself from me, because at that time she wasn't, living in my household, it was different rules over at our mom's house and over here, and I couldn't go over to her mom's house and try to rectify the situation, because whatever I go over there and say, no matter if I'm getting it out or trying to help, it's still not going to stick. Absolutely. It wasn't going to stick, so I had to deal with time. I had to deal with time healing the situation, and as crazy that is, it's through church, but I had to, deal with that. And then once that got, dealt with, now we have the best relationship. But if I was one of those guys who didn't mature, and I keep using that word, but didn't mature spiritually, to understand, okay, you ain't perfect.
Come on.
You ain't perfect, Dante. And I know what I did when I was, hanging out. It just rippled down. It was on this time, I was on the receiving end of it. But now today, because we understand that me and my daughter, we have the best relationship, because I thank God for that time set in. But I didn't, after we found out that she was pregnant, I didn't, knock up. Now, how the baby's here? How can we fix this thing? How can we make it right? So I thank God for, I am thankful for the not being that dad, you gotta go do this, that, and the other. But I'm also grateful that I matured to let time heal something that I couldn't fix. You know what I'm saying? So that's that.
We have to understand that they're allowed mistakes just like we was allowed mistakes. It may be a big mistake of us, but think how they feel.
Right.
Like my son, and mistake that you did this time. You got to think on it. And I believe God loved me so much, man, that I believe God will move your kids sometimes. Even if he put you in that situation, he put you there for a reason. Because you need to sit still.
That's right.
Yeah. I say you need to think about the moves that you make. So,
isn't it true when our children mess up, because we get offended, you can get silent, but don't they need probably our wisdom even more because of where they are at that point? So can someone talk about that?
Yes, sir. That's fair. You know what I mean? So they do need that nurturing when they mess up, but they need to know how to feel comfortable to come to that person, to that parent. If they have that much fear creates separation, and they won't come to the parent. But if they feel comfortable enough to know that the parent is mature enough to handle the situation, to guide them, because, you know, then it's different, then the child will come. You know, then there won't be no fear, won't be no barrier. So that's going to be an open line of communication. I thank God that I have that with my daughter. I went through a pregnancy. I was there. And when I found out, I pretty much almost passed out. I just dropped. But I was there for my daughter. You know, I'm not going to sit there and say blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? She need me. You know, she need compassion. She needs understanding, you know. So I was the one in her corner. You know, I'm not saying the wife wasn't, but, you know what I mean? I was right there. And she always know that she felt comfortable to come to me. And so whenever anything got messy, she can come to me and talk to me. There's no fear there. But there's respect. I respect her, she respect me. You know, but we have no fear there. So that will give an open line of communication, you know.
I think when communicating with your kids is really big and it starts early. And you don't have to be a live in the house dad to keep communication lines open with your children. And I could talk a lot, and I get that from my mother. When I could, but I'm the one that will talk. And I'm gonna say, and when I get silent, it's like silent can be correction. And let's not get it twisted how these kids are these days. They real, what's that word we use?
Entitled, needy.
Entitlement. Yeah. And you can't allow kids to play you. You get what I'm saying? So my kids know if I get quiet for a reason, and it's for a reason. Like I've gotten silent on Lanika, and then I get a letter the next morning. You get what I'm saying? But I've also talked to them too. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? So it's like everything needs to have a balance, and every kid is different. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like you feel bad, like you failed her. So sometimes, not you, but I'm just saying, parents in general, especially moms, they will pacify something that doesn't need to be pacified. Right. You get what I'm saying? There's still you made this decision. We're gonna work on fixing it, but we're not gonna do everything for you. We're gonna help you. So because that's you still teaching them how to be a parent. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, you just can't enable them. Is the word I want to say.
The crazy thing is that a lot of times men we're heavy on respect. Like our love language is respect. And I remember when I first got married, and you know, I was we was a blended family, and you know, of course I'm like respect. But when I found out that if I loved them as hard as I wanted them to give respect, it made the communication better. And a lot of times we're headstrong on respect, but we gotta love them as hard as we want respect, and it makes it so much easier. We got probably two more spots we can talk. So go ahead. What you think, D, Minister?
My thing is, what struggles with me and my kids is I've always come to them and say, hey, you can always come and talk to me. Mm-hmm. I think the respect that I required and demanded when they were younger kind of weaned them off of coming to me. So, you know, they're more susceptible to going to their moms. Mm-hmm. And then she always say, you know, you just need to talk to them. I said, I tell them all the time, if y'all ever want to talk, we can talk about anything. We got man talk. Just come up to me like, hey, I want to have a man-to-man talk. I said, we sit down, we chop it up. Man-to-man, you can say whatever's on your heart. You know, it's just me and you. Mm-hmm. But they're starting to break out of it, which is good. But I think the early part, like you were saying, it was so hard and strenuous on them that they kind of shut down. They were the ones that was quiet and silent on me. When they had questions, they don't want to come to me. So, like Mr. Rock said, it's that time. That time will break things as it goes on.
I think, I tell you this, the more transparent I am with God, and I think about how many times He has forgiven me, it makes it so much easier to forgive and deal with our kids and people that offend us. Because we think about how often we offend God. Y'all, that's our time. They're probably gonna fire me from being there because I'm over 3 seconds. But y'all, thank you for letting us in our home. Thank you once again, Pastor Tony Smith. All right, and thank you, Man Up Crew. Y'all want to say goodbye? Thank y'all for having us.
Right.
Peace out.